At 72, Harold had developed an almost adversarial relationship with the clock on his bedside table. Every night, the green digital numbers would glow in the darkness, counting off the minutes he failed to sleep, and every morning he'd rise groggy, shoulders aching, head clouded. He'd mutter about sleep being for the young as he shuffled to the kitchen for coffee that no longer seemed to sharpen his mind. It wasn't until his annual physical that his doctor, Dr. Ellery, raised an eyebrow at Harold's casual confession that he often didn't fall asleep until well past midnight. "That's not just late for someone your age," she said, flipping through his chart. "That's stealing years from your life." Harold laughed. "Years? I'm 72. The bank's already foreclosing." "Not if you change your bedtime," she replied. The doctor explained that after 70, the body's circadian rhythm, its internal clock, was more fragile, more easily disrupted. It was like an old watch that needed gentler handling, winding at the right hour to keep ticking. And for people in Harold's age bracket, the evidence pointed to an ideal bedtime between 9:30 and 10:30 p.m. Not earlier, not later. "Why that window?" Harold asked. "Because your deepest, most restorative sleep happens in the first third of the night," she said. "Push that window later, and you miss the peak opportunity for your brain and body to repair themselves. Memory consolidation, hormone regulation, immune system strengthening, they all suffer." Harold waved a hand. "I've been fine all these years going to bed when I feel like it." Dr. Ellery gave him the kind of smile reserved for stubborn patients. "That's like saying you've been fine eating cake for dinner for decades. Eventually, the bill comes due." That night, Harold sat in his living room, television flickering, remote in one hand, glass of red wine in the other. He looked at the clock, 9:45. If he were to follow the doctor's advice, he'd have to turn the TV off now, shuffle to bed, and what? Lie there? Think about how ridiculous it felt to obey a bedtime at his age. Still, he gave it a try. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling restless. His mind refused to quiet. He thought about the old days, working late shifts at the newspaper, falling asleep at 1 a.m., waking at 6 a.m., functioning on caffeine and deadlines. He thought about Marlene, his wife, gone these 12 years, who used to fall asleep within 5 minutes of her head hitting the pillow. She'd told him once, "You'll understand the joy of a good bedtime when you're old." He didn't, not then. The next morning, Harold woke at 5:30 without an alarm. He didn't feel any different, still stiff, still groggy, but something about waking up naturally was interesting. No blaring beeps, no panic that he'd overslept. The second night, the same thing happened. The third night, he fell asleep a little faster. By the end of the week, something surprising began to happen. He started dreaming again. Vivid dreams, not the hazy, fragmented ones he barely remembered. In one dream, Marlene was standing in their garden, clipping roses, humming to herself. In another, he was a young reporter again, chasing a story through a bustling city. He mentioned it to Dr. Ellery at a follow-up. "That's a good sign," she said. "Your brain is hitting deeper REM cycles. Dreaming more means your sleep architecture is repairing itself." Harold frowned. "Sleep architecture?" She explained it as the structure of the night's sleep, the patterns of light, deep, and REM stages. Age, she said, had a way of flattening that structure, making nights more restless and less restorative. But by syncing bedtime with the body's natural hormone cycles, when melatonin peaked, when core temperature dropped, he was letting his body work like it was meant to. It wasn't magic. There were still nights he lay awake. But gradually, something subtle shifted in Harold's days. His morning fog began to clear faster. His appetite steadied. His afternoon naps became shorter and less desperate. Even his arthritis pain seemed milder. By the second month, he noticed something else. His mood was different. Less irritability. More patience, even with his neighbor's noisy leaf blower. He started walking to the park in the mornings, something he hadn't done in years. The park at 6 a.m. was a different world. Quiet, damp with dew, the air smelling faintly of pine and earth. One crisp October morning, he stopped at a bench to watch the sunrise. The light spilled over the treetops, and he realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd seen a sunrise like this. Not because it had been rare, but because he'd been asleep, or worse, too tired to notice. Later, he told his friend Walter about his new bedtime experiment over lunch. Walter laughed. I'll stick to my midnight crossword. Thank you very much. I'm not going to bed like a schoolboy. That's what I thought, Harold said. But it's not about rules. It's about giving your body what it's been asking for. Walter rolled his eyes. You sound like a self-help book. Maybe he did. But Harold also knew the truth. Aging was a negotiation with time, and time didn't bargain. You could fight it, or you could work with it. 3 months in, Harold had become protective of his bedtime. He turned down late-night TV marathons. He let calls go to voicemail after 9. He even changed the lighting in his home, swapping out bright bulbs for softer ones that signaled his body it was winding down. There was no dramatic miracle. He didn't feel 20 years younger or wake up bursting with energy. But there was a steadiness to his days now, like a boat finally finding the rhythm of the waves instead of being tossed around. One night in December, Harold woke briefly at 2 a.m., something that used to happen often. But instead of lying there restless, his body felt heavy, anchored. He drifted back into a deep, dream-filled sleep. When morning came, he rose without groaning. It was the small victories that mattered now. By spring, he had a new ritual. At 9:15 each night, he made a cup of chamomile tea. At 9:30, he read a book in bed. Sometimes he made it through a whole chapter, sometimes just a few pages before his eyelids sagged. Dr. Ellery was pleased. Your blood pressure's better, your mood's better, and you've lost 5 pounds without changing your diet. You've given your body the extra repair time it needs. Harold didn't know if that was the whole truth, but he knew this. Life felt clearer, sharper around the edges. He remembered more of his dreams now, and sometimes they felt like small gifts, a visit from an old friend, a glimpse of a place he'd forgotten. He still thought about Marlene, often in those quiet moments before sleep. One night, he whispered into the dark, "You were right about bedtime." And maybe it was his imagination, or maybe just the drift into dreaming, but he could have sworn he heard her soft laugh, as if she'd been waiting for him to figure it out.